All right. Well, welcome everybody to the second traffic calming meeting for Shepherd Hills Drive. My name is David Greaves. I work with NDOT and I'm going to be facilitating this meeting tonight. We're meeting virtually only today, and it's January 27th, 2025, meeting at 5:30 p.m. For anyone who wasn't at the first meeting, we're going to have some refreshing material to kind of briefly cover what we talked about last time. And the first item of that is just an overview of what is traffic calming. So the Neighborhood Street Traffic Calming Program, that's what NSTC stands for, is one that focuses on residential streets. So we don't do these on, commercial corridors or certainly arterial boulevards. This is more intended for neighborhoods where people live. This is a program that tends to focus on physical solutions that encourage lower speeds over significant lengths. That generally points to the fact that we try not to do projects like these, like a block at a time. We generally have people apply for a longer segment of road. And the primary goal of this program is speed reduction, and that ties directly into safety, and we'll look at that connection in a minute. There are 3 E's of traffic calming. Those are education, enforcement, and engineering. Now, engineering is bold and underlined here because of the 3 E's, that's the one that NDOT has the greatest ability to control. So certainly we try to educate as many Nashvillians as possible, and this meeting is an example of one way we do that among many other things. Enforcement is within the purview of Metro Nashville Police Department, and enforcing speed is just one of many, many duties that they are tasked with. So we try to fill in on streets where speeding is occurring by generating an engineered solution to result in lower speeds rather than relying strictly on enforcement and education to have safe driving occur. As I hinted at earlier, there's a pretty direct connection between vehicle speeds and safety outcomes, and this infographic demonstrates that fairly clearly. But essentially what it shows is that a pedestrian, should it be hit by a vehicle traveling at 25 miles an hour, which is the speed limit on the street that you all live on, they don't have a perfect chance of surviving, but 89% is like fairly likely that they'll make it out of that interaction alive. It's definitely not something we ever want to have occur. But unfortunately, as speeds climb to that 35 mile an hour or 45 mile an hour range, the likelihood that they're going to live goes way down. And so where this ties into our work tonight is basically cementing the fact that lower speeds are really what we're going for because it has such an effect on the safety of residents living in the neighborhood and anyone using that roadway. This is a really popular program among NDOT's work. So in March of 2024, when Shepherd Hills was selected for traffic calming, we had over 500 neighborhood street applications in the queue. So this map off to the right is a screenshot of Nashville's live traffic calming tracker. We'll have a little more information about that in a bit, but essentially it lets you view any of the projects or streets that have applied for traffic calming and then track some data about where it might be in the process. In the spring of 2024, when Shepherd Hills Drive was selected, we were able to choose 25 neighborhood streets to receive traffic calming projects like this one. So out of that list of over 500, Shepherd Hills, based on the data that we collected, was ranked in that top 25, which says to us there's a pretty significant need for speed reduction on Shepherd Hills and its neighboring street. But just wanted to kind of catch everyone up as to how this project began and why we feel that it's necessary to do something to address that issue. There are a few tools in the traffic calming toolbox, but there are all sorts of things that NDOT and Metro Nashville, the broader entity, is able to handle. So we want to make sure everyone's aware of Hub Nashville. It's a website, it's a phone number, 311, and hub.nashville.gov. It's also an app that I've got on my phone, and if you're into such things, would recommend downloading. It's a pretty easy way to access. But this is a system intended to really receive requests for anything pertaining to do with Nashville, whether it be streets, roads, and sidewalks, debris in the road, all the way down to things like potholes, trash, litter, you name it. So they do all sorts of things, and if we encounter anything that would maybe be better as a hub request than like a traffic calming feedback, I'll be sure to make sure that y'all are aware of that. This is a map of the project extents in that kind of light green line. So we actually are designing a solution for Shepherd Hills Drive and Spring Branch Drive. We think that based on the public feedback and the traffic volumes that we see, that a lot of the traffic is kind of using both of those roads in conjunction. And I believe the original application had it laid out this way as well. So I'm going to say Shepherd Hills Drive. That's sort of how we're referring to the project. But Spring Branch Drive is also included in our design, and the two kind of work hand in hand for the plans. So next I'm going to talk about the specific traffic calming measures that we're proposing. But before I do that, I want to just take our first pause and make sure that there aren't any questions from those online. Feel free to use the chat whenever, but this is a time that you can come off mute if you'd like to ask as well. All right, we will charge ahead. So we reviewed some of this last time in the meeting, but the primary tool that we are proposing for Shepherd Hills Drive to do that vehicle slowing are speed cushions. These are modular rubber devices that are intended to slow vehicles by causing vertical deflection. So they're a little bit like speed bumps, but they're stretched way out to lengths of 7, 10.5, or 14 feet. And that creates a higher target speed. So a speed bump is like a foot long. Those are really intended more for like parking lots or school drop-offs where it's really important to be going like 5 to 10 miles an hour. These are designed to be in the roadway. So we're targeting a speed of 20 to 25 miles an hour for people driving over these. And that's sort of why they're designed a little bit differently than speed bumps. They're about 3 inches tall, and typically they're 6 feet wide. That's a really deliberate width. The thought is that it reduces the impact to emergency response vehicles because they have wider wheelbases and are better able to kind of hit the center of those and be less affected than a smaller like sedan or light truck might be. So that's sort of the distinction between speed cushions and what we didn't propose, speed tables. Those stretch all the way across the road and have a similar impact to emergency vehicles as regular vehicles. We reviewed this last time, but this is the results of a limited study that NDOT conducted pre and post installation of vertical measures. This was done in March of 2023, but they found that the average speed on those roads came down from 31 miles an hour to 22 miles an hour. And then the 85th percent speed, which means that 85% of those measured were going at or lower than that number. That came down from 37 miles an hour all the way to 25. The reason I show these is because it sort of it demonstrates why we consider these a good investment when the goal is to produce safe speeds on neighborhood roadways. The results essentially speak for themselves, but really we're looking to have people drive at or near the speed limit rather than going in that kind of 35 and up range that we sometimes see. In addition to the speed cushions, we have 2 radar feedback signs. We place these because you all have a pretty steep hill on Spring Branch Road, and we're not able to install speed cushions at an appropriate spacing on that hill. So the speed cushions will have a bit of a break, and then on the hill, you'll see these. The thought is to kind of just supplement, maybe we're not able to remind people with cushions that they should be going the speed limit, but this is sort of intended to be a reminder of that. And then lastly, in our original concept, we did not propose bulb outs, but after some good discussion and neighbors expressing some observations that they have made on the corner of Spring Branch Road and Shepherd Hills Drive, we were asked to look into installing these. And what we've done is kind of laid them out, looked at the geometry, and determined that that intersection actually would benefit from these. So what these are intended to do is tighten the turning radius between two streets. They're like an intersection treatment specifically. And by tightening the turning radius, what that does is it forces vehicles to take those turns at a more appropriate speed. So you can't like really go fast around them. It's somewhere between like an interstate ramp where it's a really wide, long curve that you can go to high speed, and turning into a driveway where it's like a really tight 90-degree where you'd go really slow. The radius we've chosen is 20 feet. That's pretty normal for most streets. Y'all's right now is a little wider, hence some of the fast turning that was observed. But we'll take a closer look at the specific design as we review the plans. Speaking of which, these are the plans. This is going to look pretty similar to the concept that we reviewed in our last meeting. We did not change the number or spacing of the speed cushions. It seemed like there was generally pretty good feedback on what we had proposed there. We've also kept those radar feedback signs at the intersection of Cood Lane. Again, that's because there's a steep hill that prevents us from having an even spacing of cushions. And then the main addition is the bulb outs on the corner of Shepherd Hills Drive and Spring Branch Road. The following pages are just some zoomed in plans showing the specific locations of the cushions. Now, a little bit about some of the constraints we use when we place these pertain to curves, hills, and driveway clearance. There's a couple others, but those are the big three. So you may notice that we've tried to find positions for these that are not too close to anyone's driveway. Usually we're shooting for like 15 feet from the edge of the driveway to the edge of the cushion. And I don't think we had any instances here where we weren't able to meet that design guideline. You'll see we've got addresses labeled here. So if you're curious, like where a cushion may be in relation to your house, feel free to take a look at those. I'm also happy to go back to any of these if I'm going too fast. And then the view twisted a little bit, but we're now heading over to Myatt Drive. And then you can see here's those two radar feedback signs, as well as some signage for the speed cushions, making sure everyone's aware of them before they get to them. And then we can hang out here for just a sec. This is a bird's eye view zoomed in even more onto those bulb outs, and you can kind of see where we have pretty wide turning radii of asphalt. We've just taken paint and some flexible delineators to tighten that intersection up to a more reasonable size that will not allow for dangerous behavior as at that intersection.
David?
Yes.
Hi, this is Danielle. I live on the corner there at 300. Will that impact, or will they have to do anything with our actual yard or the grass?
They shouldn't, no.
Okay.
Yeah, these aren't anything besides bolt-on materials and striping.
Okay.
So you may see people, like hanging out there when they're installing it, but we won't need to like tear up anything.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions or feedback on the design itself? After this, we've got some process to cover, but want to make sure that we cover this as much as we need to before moving on.
David, I have to get off of here. They
Sure.
They scheduled me for a presentation at 6. I'm downtown actually, but I started at 5 and I'm giving mine at 6. So I jumped on. And who is going to take the lead on this? Michelle, are you the lead?
I can take the lead depending on what is needed, but I'm happy to talk about that.
Y'all haven't voted yet, correct, David?
That's correct.
So you have to have, in order to get this done, you have to have so much percentage response. And I have found that the only way we have been getting that is we have to get out. Usually I take a lead, I meet the lead, and then we can just go door to door. After they'll send us a list of who's responded and who hasn't, and we'll try to make sure we get the percentage if this is what y'all agree on.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I'll make sure that we review all of the details of how that works in the next few slides.
Okay,
But
we're on.
thank you for highlighting that.
Yes. Any questions for me before I have to move over?
We just got logged back in on the phone line.
Okay.
Can you just quickly tell us? I've got three people on in the neighborhood here with me, and we were kicked off of the meeting at the beginning, and we've just now been able to get back through to here because it keeps wanting a password to get online, and I don't have a password. So can you quickly just tell us what you said?
Yeah, sure. I'll do a quick recap, and then I'm more than happy to hang on at the end and cover anything if in more detail if necessary.
Because I was online and we did talk earlier, and then it kicked us all the way off, and now it won't let us back on. It keeps wanting a meeting password.
Okay, well, good to know. And again, sorry to hear about the technical difficulties. But we just finished reviewing the plans. And I guess if you're on the phone, are you able to see my screen?
No, it won't let me back in at all. It wants a password.
Oh,
it kicked me out and made me not the code.
I just put an access
password.
code in the, do you need the access code? Is that what you need?
No, I put in the access code, and it's telling me on this WebEx that it needs a password, the meeting password.
Interesting.
So I've called in on the phone. I've tried every other way. That's why we've just gotten back in.
Got it. I don't know exactly what might be going on with the password, but it sounds like we're running into some sort of roadblock. So the good news is this meeting is recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube in the next couple of days. Why don't I move forward and try to kind of just describe everything as best I can, and then if you want to get like really visual with it, we can make sure that you can access that recording after the fact.
Okay, so is this plan already a done deal? It's already set?
That's a great question. Yes and no. So we have done our first meeting where we collected a lot of good feedback from the neighbors who attended that informed the design that we're presenting now. We, of course, are open to more feedback. That's why we're having this meeting. So we'd be happy to hear any thoughts or suggestions that you'd like us to look into. But for the most part, what we have here are construction plans that can be, built off of, ready to go. So we may just kind of handle that depending on what feedback you all may have. But yeah, essentially over the course of Shepherd Hills Drive and Spring Branch Road, we're proposing 10 sets of speed cushions, generally evenly spaced, but there's a gap near Cood Lane where we have radar feedback signs instead. Reason for that is there's a steep hill that prevented us from having an 11th set of speed cushions. And then we have what are called bulb outs at the corner of Shepherd Hills Drive and Spring Branch Road. And that was in response to feedback from a neighbor of that intersection, pointing out that people do tend to drive dangerously, maybe too fast, maybe not stopping at the stop signs.
Correct. Correct.
So we looked into that and determined that we generally agree and thought it would be productive to add those. So we've tightened those turning radius with striping and the flexible delineators, and just made the intersection a little smaller to encourage slower and safer vehicle behavior.
Now, I have a question. Is it time? I mean, could I ask that question, or is this holding everything up? When you say they're going to be speed cushions, are these the speed cushions that have the metal poles on the outside of them?
Potentially, in this case,
Because
no.
on Spring Branch, we have a problem with having no shoulder on the road. I live, and another person here with me lives on Spring Branch. I live at 1902, and she lives at she lives at 1902. I live at 1903, and then I have a person here from Shepherd Hills. They're elderly, and they came to my house to this meeting, and we couldn't get in. So, but there are no shoulders on Spring Branch Drive, and that's what I have a concern. The road is already narrow, and if it's going to have these metal poles, because I have seen those cushions put in down by Madison Park, and they have a metal pole on the outside on each side, and then the cushion is in the street. And from Shepherd Hills to Coode Lane is there's only 4 houses on that street. How many of those cushions are you proposing to put in?
Yeah, that's a great question. So on this street, we are not proposing poles on the pavement. We'll generally only do those in kind of niche circumstances. Often buses are involved, and just kind of the position in the lane is really important. For Spring Branch Road, we're proposing 3 cushions across, and that generally fills up pavement width of 27 and 28 feet. So we try to place these such that they're not easy.
But is that only from Coode Lane to Shepherd Hills, or is that all the way from Myatt Drive to Shepherd Hills?
That's a good question. So we found that Spring Branch Road is a little wider than Shepherd Hills. So Spring Branch will have configurations 3 across, and then Shepherd Hills Drive is between 20 and 22 feet wide. And those widths of roadway only require 2 cushions across to get the job done.
I understand that, but I'm talking about the total number of those cushions would be on each side of the road, correct? Is that correct? And on Spring Branch, there is no shoulder on the road. There is not enough room to even walk on the. So I'm wondering where these poles are going to go, and if that's going to make the street narrower.
Yeah, so there will be no poles on the pavement, and the street will not be made narrower by this project.
Well, where are the poles going to go, I guess is what my concern is. Because there's only my ditch and then the ladies across the street's ditch.
Understood. So there will be no delineators on the street in association with the configuration of the cushions. Sometimes we do those, but here we are not.
Oh, okay. So you mean there won't be any poles at all? Is that what you're telling me?
There will be signs. So we have signs to warn drivers that cushions are coming up.
But where are those signs going to go? There is nothing on the road. There is no side of the road. It's completely a ditch in my yard.
Oh, got it. So we don't propose exact locations of signs. Generally, that's figured out in the field. But off the pavement is where they typically belong. So in between the edge of the pavement and where the neighbor's property starts is often where they wind up.
Okay, I don't know that you're following me, because there is no side of the road. There is maybe a 12-inch little strip of gravel, and then there is the ditch that goes into my yard.
Got it. So they may be near or on the slope of the ditch.
So how in the world am I going to be able to mow the ditch anymore?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if we're proposing a sign on your specific yard, but same way that any signs are mowed around is usually how.
We don't have any signs.
So if there was like a stop sign at an intersection,
I live in the.
Yep.
The stop sign is on the corner of the road, and it's a moot point. Apparently, you're not understanding me, because the sign would have to be in the middle of the ditch, and that's why I was asking how many of these pads were you going to put on Spring Branch, and you said 3 or 4, if I understood correctly. And
I see.
But
so
you can't
so
tell
there
me
will
if that is from Myatt Drive all the way up to Shepherd Hills, or if it's from Coode Lane to Shepherd Hills. if it's from Coon Lane to Shepherd Hills, you're putting 4 of those on the span of
Oh, I think I
4
think
houses.
and Maya Drive, we're proposing 3 locations where speed cushions will be installed.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Does
and
that,
this
will
may
that
make
be,
more
is that
sense
shown
sorry.
on a video or your plan? Will that be shown on the plan of where they're proposed to go?
Yes, yes. So you'll be able to
Okay.
review the video, and then we'll talk about voting in a minute, but we also make the
Okay.
plans available online before voting happens. So you'll be able to both see them and then ask questions if you need to.
Okay. And are you also proposing those buffers on Shepherd Hills?
Yes, on Shepherd Hills, there will be speed cushions as well.
Okay.
Any more questions or feedback on the plans?
Well, I haven't seen the plan, so I don't have any other. Those were my concerns to start out with. So until I see the plan, I can't tell you that. But if there's anybody else.
I see a question in the chat. Is there any way to have the first speed cushion coming off Gallatin Pike moved back until after the entrance of the shopping center? That is a good question. Perhaps. It looks like we do have a couple feet there that would work. Yeah, I don't see why that would be a problem. If you don't mind elaborating on what the concern is.
I don't know if you can hear me. I'm on behalf of the owner of the shopping center. His main concern is just having like a clear and free access to the shopping center so customers are able to come in and out easily and not hinder any business.
Oh, I see. Understood. Yeah, I'll go ahead and look into that. It's not a no for sure, but yeah, we place them fairly deliberately at like spacings, and we don't want that cushion to be too far from the beginning of the road. But we may decide to take that feedback into it and turn it into a design revision.
Okay, yeah, because it's like right where you should be turning into the shopping center, so it looks like it would make it a little difficult to turn into it.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. What I will say is what we're viewing now is like not actual size by any stretch. So they'll be further away than they like look right now, but that doesn't mean it's like way further away. I do take your point. Cool. Well, with all of that, are we good to move on to kind of how the balloting works and just sort of the next steps in the project's process?
Yes.
Right.
David, could I ask one question?
Yeah, please.
I'm Virgil Copeland. I live 110 Shepherd Hills. I submitted a request for sidewalks, and is there any chance that they will be putting any kind of bullards or anything out through here for people to walk during
Oh,
this?
that's a good question. Well, thank you for submitting your request. I'm glad that we've got it in our system already. This design does not include the creation of a walking path with delineators.
Okay.
It's not unheard of to do, but it's definitely not standard practice. On Shepherd Hills in particular, with a roadway width of 22 feet and less, there really isn't room on the existing pavement to have that kind of thing without creating lanes that are too narrow for vehicles to safely use.
Understand. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so what I'm showing on the screen here is a flowchart of a typical traffic calming design. We've heard about the application, prioritization, and selection process. The first neighborhood meeting was a few months ago. We've just reviewed the design that we generated based on that neighborhood feedback. And we're now here at that red circle at the second neighborhood meeting. That is optional, and you all chose to have this meeting here to kind of review the design that we created. And then after this meeting, what we're going to do is take the feedback that we've collected tonight, make any necessary revisions to the plans, but then go ahead with the online balloting process. So what will happen there is we'll post the plans on Metro's website and then send out ballot mailers to the same list that received invitations to this meeting here tonight. That will be open for a window of 6 weeks. And as your council member mentioned, there is a threshold that needs to be reached of favorable votes. So this project will only move forward if 66% of those who respond vote, yes, I would like to have the traffic calming measures installed. Should that be successful, it'll go into the construction queue and then ideally be built in between 8 and 10 months. I will say that's a pretty rough estimate. It could be sooner, it could be a little later, but that's generally the construction timelines we're looking at right now. A little bit more about the ballot itself. It's a postcard. It will have a unique ID code on it. That's really important because it makes sure that the votes we get are from the same people that we've asked to vote. And it can be accessed on Metro's website with instructions on the ballot code, but you're also welcome to call in and vote that way.
Did you get another card?
Sorry, what was that?
I was just asking the other two ladies here if they got one of the cards, like I did.
Oh, got it.
One said yes and one's not sure. I'm sorry. You go ahead.
No worries. I appreciate it. So the list I mentioned earlier is just anyone who is owning a parcel along the project right of way. So you don't have to have an address on Shepherd Hills or Spring Branch Road, just as long as your property is touching that zone. Owners of multiple properties only get the one vote. So we don't send, like multiple postcards to the same person. Residential properties, churches, and schools each get a vote. And then vacant properties are not eligible. That really only is looking for like buildings. We don't, we don't check like if a building is occupied or not. And then like operating businesses, so the shopping center is actually an example of this. We don't send votes to them. That being said, I do hear the feedback that we've gotten, and we will, work to address it. So that doesn't mean that, your opinion doesn't matter. It's just specifically the balloting policy. I think that covers those points. Any questions about the balloting or design, like anything we've covered so far? This is sort of near the end of the presentation.
Yes. What is the average life expectancy of each speed cushion?
That's a great question. If I'm not mistaken, the warranty from the manufacturer is for 10 years. So if it doesn't last that long, it would be replaced by them. So I think that's sort of the amount that they're looking for. But these installations are intended to be, permanent features of the street, unless something drastic should change.
Thank you. And have any had to be replaced since this traffic calming measure started?
They have. I don't have like all of the details on the specifics, but generally I think if they are like run over by really heavy construction equipment or certainly like repaving is a time when we would remove and then replace the cushions. So they generally hold up pretty well. They definitely don't like fall apart quickly, but if they're not used as intended, they can have a reduced lifespan.
David, I would jump in and I'd say like recently snowplows has been one thing that will kind of mess them up. But I mean, they are able to be removed quickly. I mean, it is a temporary measure for a permanent fix, I guess.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I knew they were, I guess, permanent or whatnot. I just didn't know. I know the program's somewhat new. Just didn't know the life expectancy of them.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, if we did put them in and the applicants, everybody who balloted and voted yes, suddenly turned around and said, "Hey, no, these things are horrible. We hate them," all that kind of stuff. You're able to remove them,
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Well, should anyone need to get in touch, this is my contact information. I will ask if you email me, go ahead and copy NDOT TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov, just to make sure everyone's in the loop. And then Nashville has a handful of social media presence that you can stay engaged with as well. Oh, and then this QR code and the URL below it is to Nashville's traffic calming website. So there's a lot more information about what we talked about on there, including an interactive version of that map we viewed earlier that can help you find traffic calming installations that are out there in the field today, if you'd like to go experience one for yourself.
Are you saying it will have the Shepherd Hills plan on it?
So
on that website?
Once we finish the design, we will upload the Shepherd Hills plans to the website. That'll be shortly before we send the ballot mailers out. So they're not online right now, except for this recording of the meeting, but you'll be able to view them before it's time to submit your vote.
One more question. When we get the flyers for the online ballots, how long is that window open to vote?
6 weeks. And the postcard will have the date that it closes. So if you didn't check your mail for a week or something, you would still be able to know when you need to vote by.
I have one question about where is it that I will be able to since we didn't get to see the actual presentation, where is it that I will be able to go and see that presentation?
Yeah, so this meeting will be posted on YouTube, specifically I think it's called Metro News Network channel. Basically, Nashville city government has a YouTube account where all of these videos are hosted. I've found though that if you search the name of your street and traffic calming, you can get to a video pretty reliably without having to really dig around for it.
I can send you a link to it as well.
That would be great.
Yes, ma'am.
It's PAMHON@AOL.com. If you could shoot me a link, or if you can shoot me a text to this phone number.
Yes, ma'am. I got you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much. Oh, sorry. Did I have one more question? Oh, I misheard.
David, I was actually going to give a little bit of an anecdotal response to what I've experienced as an engineer at NDOT, who was unaware of a project it wasn't a neighborhood traffic calming project. It was actually a bike lane project. In order to get the bike lane in, they had to put the speed cushions in to slow traffic down. And it's on Douglas Avenue. If you go down Gallatin towards East Nashville, turn left on Douglas Avenue if you're coming from Shepherd Hills, and you can experience these speed humps there. But I will say, as someone with a 5 and 4-year-old whose house setback is only 30 feet, so I'm 30 feet off the road, and people are flying down Douglas Avenue constantly. When I heard about this project, it was probably at the 90% design phase. So, I mean, it was pretty much a done deal ready to go. I did have a little bit of hesitancy. I was thinking in my mind, like, oh man, it's going to be just bump and bump and bump and bump, you know. I will say that I am done a complete 180. I'm completely amazed by you know how much safer the street feels. I wouldn't mind my kids playing in the front yard now, you know, that kind of stuff. It's really it really does it really does slow traffic down. Some people, you know, some people come to a stop before they hit it, but if you having driven them for, you know, 6 months now, if you look, there's a posted speed limit next to the cushion. You can actually hit that hit the cushion going at that speed limit, and they're really designed for that speed. So you don't really have to come to a complete stop like people say, but it does slow down traffic, and it does, you know, it does make you feel safe.
If I might add one more thing, if anybody in this area wants to go see what these are not the speed cushions, they're on North DuPont Avenue by Madison Park, and you will get an excellent idea of exactly what they are, because I think they actually have both speed bumps and they have the speed cushions, and it's on North DuPont Avenue by Madison Park.
We also have one on Paula right here below our house, right off Shepherd
Yeah, but
Hill.
that's only one. There's like 20 something on North DuPont Avenue. It adds about 15 minutes to your going to the park. But just in case you want to go see what they are.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. That is a good example of a project that's been installed in the recent past. Well, any final thoughts before we wrap up? All right. Well,
thank you for your time.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying thank you for your time.
Oh, of course. Thank you. Thank you all for joining this evening and sharing your feedback. And yeah, I'm looking forward to moving this project forward.
Thank you.
All right. Y'all have a good night.
Bye.